Let all mankind be silent before the Lord. These words of the prophet Zechariah fall well on the feast of the Quiet Lady, who is honoured by those who are like her, interiorized and still. For he is awaking and is coming from his holy dwelling. She herself was that dwelling, and the woman was already foreseen by the school of prophets at Mount Carmel. That is an internal tradition within the Carmelite family. There would be a woman. Around the 12th century, they were huddling around her as Christian hermits in that same holy mound. But then pressure from the increasingly dangerous Islamic invasion pushed them into a more tranquil Europe, where they took on the life of mendicant friars, but keeping the rule that was given to them by the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Albert. A fairly short but essential rule, the gospel for hermits. Silence then and interiority, and one phrase of his is valid for all, meditating upon the law of the Lord. In that way one reproduces the interiority of the one of whom it is said, she treasured all these things in her heart. Pondering. A reflective soul does not say everything that crosses its mind. It filters words and keeps its privy counsel. A talkative soul often has very little interiority. Why? It shares it all. If we are in dialogue with the hidden one, something of that hiddenness comes into us, and by instinct we prefer to be silent. We also prefer to be alone. There are times when two's company and three's a crowd, and the instinct to go to the desert, to the Holy Mount, is always there in the Christian soul who loves its God. In 1251, this Virgin of Carmel appeared to St. Simon Stock, there in Kent, in a holy place, Aylesford, held by the Carmelite friars to this day. And the promise of the scapular was given, that she would not allow to be lost those who wore it. And this also has an impact even on being lost in accidents and dangerous situations on this side of time. Many are the testimonies that one receives of terrible accidents, cars being written off, people coming out unscathed with just alongside them a brown scapula. Our Lady promised that she would come as the Virgin of Mount Carmel at Fatima, and she did on the 13th of October. There is also a message given to Lucia that she would come back as that same Virgin of Carmel, and she did. She came back at Garabandal in 1960, and we know that she came as the Virgin of Mount Carmel. That order has received many privileges from our Blessed Lady. No other order can boast of a monastery of its own, constructed by our Lord directly. It was the one that he wanted in Bethlehem, and he raised up Miriam, a Lebanese stigmatized lay sister. Blessed Mary of Jesus crucified, who had all the gifts, and spectacular ones at that. And the Lord became the architect of that monastery, giving curious details which are in themselves a quiet lesson. All the windows had to point upwards, and therefore all they saw was the sky. And he wanted also that the rule be observed in it. Therefore he honours the rule. He honours a rule which is blessed by the Church and examines us on it. And he was keen that the human voice should not obstruct his own, and therefore through her indicated that he did not want to hear the human voice in the common places, the corridors and the like. He would say the same to us in our churches. Indeed, Jacinta of Fatima, before dying, gave that message directly from our Blessed Lady to the Cardinal of Lisbon, that Our Lady did not want people talking in church. It was displeasing. If she were to appear in our time, I am sure that she would say other things that she did not like to see in church. No one seems to pause to ask whether our Blessed Lady is pleased when anyone handles roughly the body that came through her and from her own body, the blood that came from her and through her veins. Is it not logical? The preparation that went into her as the Immaculate Virgin of Carmel would not also go in some shape or form into those who hold the most sacred gift of all, the body and blood of our Lord. It should not be bandied about as any common object. Why, I'm sure she would say, must we be so hurried in the West as to miss the grace of a quiet, extended communion, sustained, if necessary, by calm psalm? Why the haste to crash into eternity and back, and think we can gain the same? Indeed, at Medjugorje, it seemed that one of the first messages she gave was that fasting had almost entirely disappeared from the West. She did say from the West, it would seem. That being a bridge country, the old Yugoslavia, both rites, Eastern and Western, were present, and therefore both disciplines were also present. In the East, they take fasting far more seriously. Again, we come easily to the Lord on a full stomach. Just one more consumption. It matters little that it be the bread of angels, the Lord of Lords. But then, these miracles, amongst many, I just cite what happened one time during the Second World War. A good American Catholic soldier had been given the brown scapular by his good mother, and he'd never ever gone to battle without it and wouldn't be separated from 1 minute from it. At some point in the course of the war, they were already there in Europe, the soldiers found an abandoned farm, and there was a pump there with running water. So they zoomed into that. It was precious. They could wash themselves and take off some of the odour of their sweat. To do so properly, he took off the scapula and put it by the pump, and distractedly went on with his duties. Then it came to sleeping on the ground in the night, and he felt for it. Oh, he'd forgotten it. Pity he'd never ever been without it throughout the whole of the campaign. Tried to get to sleep. Tried several times to get to sleep, but there was nothing doing. He couldn't get to sleep. He had to get it back. He went to the officer in charge of the camp to try and get permission. He was reluctant, but then he had a brainwave, make yourself useful and get me some water from that inn down there. I'm thirsty. So with that he went off. He got to the pump at a loss. The scapula was not there. He was devastated. He went anyway to get some proper water, as the officer had commanded in this inn. And what happened, but he found another of his brigade there also at the same time. And he also heard something terrible. He heard a huge explosion and looked to see where it was coming from. And it was coming from just where his whole troop was trying to sleep. It would seem that a delayed mine had gone off by the retreating Germans, who knew that that was the best way to get them. But then he found, coming into the inn, this comrade of his, of the same troop. He was alive. How did you get here, and how were you spared? Well, it's like this. And he pulled out the brown scapula. I had found this by the pump, and I knew it meant a lot to you, so I wanted you to have it. Here it is. And do you see? This one scapula has saved 2 lives in the midst of a colossal explosion that blew up the whole brigade.